Welcome back to Turf Talk, Horses Get Beat edition. And Vance, after extolling the virtues of Frosted, Met Mile and Whitney wins. We thought he couldn't lose the Woodward, and various reasons, excuses have been made, but horses get beat. And I thought your column on it was fantastic. I'm a big proponent of weight for age. I do not understand why we handicap grade 1 horses when there's so much money on the line in terms of breeding and betting. Let them run.
Yeah, and the surprising thing is that Kieran McLaughlin brought up the weight discrepancy on Sunday along with the whip issue, but just sticking to weights for a moment, he kind of was nonplussed about it. Having to give 6 pounds to Mubtaahij and 4 pounds to the winner Shaman Ghost. It's not like he came out and advocated getting rid of the allowance weight system where Frosted had to carry 124 and everybody else was far below. So I don't know what exactly to make of that. It's not exactly something that's people are beating the drum about like they did with handicaps back in the day. But it's very strange to me that 126 pounds is being carried by horses only in the Classics, a few other assorted 3-year-old races, and then the Breeders' Cup Classic. The rest of the year, the best older horses in the country, best 3-year-olds are carrying a lot less. And I think it's just time to go to the weight for age scale.
Yeah, and for me, Arrowgate was in one of those races you mentioned, the Travers. He carried 126. Songbird was at the 3-year-old filly level for the Alabama. To me, that's going to be a factor in my Breeders' Cup handicapping, is that they've done it. But on the Frosted side of things, him being high weight under the conditions makes sense. So, like Kieran, if you accept it and enter the horse, you understand why he's the high weight. I don't understand why in a race like the Woodward you wouldn't start at 126, though. That's what he's going to have to carry in the Breeders' Cup. He won the Met Mile. He won the Whitney. Clearly one of the best horses in training. Have him carry the weight that he would in the Breeders' Cup, and then make the others allowance based on that, and they would have to pick up a few extra pounds. Not saying it would have made a difference because there's still the discrepancy, but to me, like you, I don't understand why we don't start at 126. Same goes when handicapping races. That should be the starting point.
Yeah, and I wrote this in a blog several years ago that if we wanted to keep handicaps, which I was in favor of, always start with the best horse in the race and give it 126 pounds. Work your way backwards down through the field. And if your horse carries 126 to victory, chances are he's not going to carry the same weight the next time because he might be facing a better field where he's actually getting weight from another horse for a top weight. So
right.
There's lots of ideas floating around. I've put out several over the years, but I think it's finally time to get rid of the allowance weight system, which I think is basically just handicaps. We're just not calling it like that anymore.
Absolutely.
And I don't understand the double standard that prominent horsemen aren't complaining about this, really, especially after a race like the Woodward, which used to be a weight for age race. Frosted loses that race on Saturday by a head, giving 4 pounds to the winner. That would cause an uproar if I owned the horse.
Yeah, and his start wasn't ideal, and he was probably further back than they would have liked, in part because of the start. And to me, that's when weight makes a difference. It's one thing, and you see this in harness with horses. They have the inertia. Doesn't really matter once they get going if they're pacing with someone 200 pounds behind them. That could actually be a benefit even once they get going. Well, with horses, if you start and stop or have to accelerate, every ounce matters at that point, and it certainly was a factor. Now, having made the excuses, I'll say at 2 to 5, it was a bad loss. I would have rather seen it at equal weights, and then we can decide what we think. But that was a race you should have won. The trip in the lane was bizarre to me. It just didn't. I guess Joel thought he had the race won. What was your take watching that unfold? Thinking, oh, he's going to get there, and oh no, he's not.
At first glance, it looks like a very cocky, overconfident ride on Rosario's part. He basically pulled even with the leaders, at the furlong pole or less than a furlong to go. And by then, at that point, most everybody watching the race figures, okay, time to draw the stick, give him a little encouragement with the whip. He continued to hand ride him to the wire and was outfinished by a couple of horses. And after the fact, Kieran McLaughlin says this horse doesn't respond well to the whip. And I can understand that. Some horses sulk from that. But, when you have an important race on the line, like the Woodward, you want your jockey to at least try and get the most out of the horse. bring up the hypothetical that I did yesterday on my blog. What's the jockey going to do in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic or the Pegasus World Cup when he's theoretically head and head in the stretch with California Chrome? Is he just going to hand ride against California Chrome and possibly lose all that purse money and stud fee enhancements in the future?
Doubtful.
Very doubtful.
Yeah.
And also we have to bring up the fact that, the bettors bet Frosted down to 2-5, a very heavy favorite. No doubt he was a single in a lot of people's multi-race wagers, and ultimately I don't think he got the best ride in the world.
No, I don't even, it wasn't even a vigorous hand ride. It was, whether overconfidence or what. Joel did say, he got tired. I'm sorry, those are horses he should have beat. We're not talking about California Chrome, and he didn't. So that does long-term bring up the question, now what do you do with him? Jokes about the dirt mile made by me and others. I feel like if you're going to go to the Breeders' Cup and travel all that way, you might as well go for the big enchilada. If he had won that race, you'd say, he was wide, he gave weight, it was, a dubious ride, and he still won. Everyone would be excited. So to me, now it's a matter of all of a sudden, here's a horse who was the favorite for the Breeders' Cup before the Pacific Classic. Now he might be third choice, fourth if it rains and exaggerators in the race. Now all of a sudden it's like, do you take a flyer at 4 or 5 to 1 on a horse who a few weeks ago looked like he'd maybe even be the favorite?
Yeah, just the fact that I think he's still in championship contention, theoretically. I think it's the best spot for him to go for the Breeders' Cup Classic. The dirt mile, it's a 2-turn mile at Santa Anita. It's always a little different than the 1-turn miles that you see on the East Coast. And I think if he falters in the Classic like he did last year, doesn't put in a good showing, he can always wheel back in 3-4 weeks for the Cigar Mile at Aqueduct, which should hit him right between the eyes. And so I think those 2 races are probably the good ones to wind the career down with, if that's the direction they want to take, or if they want to keep him in training even for the Pegasus World Cup next January.
Yeah, and with him, to me, it's all gravy at this point. Obviously, they're going for a championship, maybe even Horse of the Year if he beats Chrome at all in the Classic. If he doesn't, though, he won the Met Mile. He's a Grade 1 winner at 3 and 4. He's by Tapit, most importantly, for what happens next year. So if he adds the Cigar Mile, even with the Classic loss, that's a huge stallion prospect. If he retires tomorrow, or even if he loses out, he's still a Met Mile winner, Grade 1 winner at 3, etc., and a tremendous stallion prospect. That's in the bank. So to me, why not just go for it? He has some to lose because he won't win the championship, losing the Classic, but ultimately, just everything to gain, it seems.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll leave it on that note. I always like to be agreed with. We'll be back next week. We have Belmont opening this week, Kentucky Downs action, plenty to discuss, I'm sure. Join us then.